Got a Fox News alert for you. You are looking at live pictures of the president's plane, Air Force One, landing in Buenos Aires, Argentina tonight. I think it has just touched down right now. So when he comes out of the plane or if anything interesting happens, obviously we'll go there right away because we're Fox News and we're on it. Want now to sort of tie up, put a bow on the midterm elections. One of the races that we're still talking about is the one that took place in Georgia. The reason we're still talking about it is because one of the candidates has refused to concede, and that has given rise to an extended conversation about something called voter suppression. Turns out that turnout in the Georgia 2018 election was dramatically up over prior midterm years. 57% of registered voters turned out. That compares to less than half in 2010 or 2014. And yet, despite that, the Democrat in the race, Stacey Abrams, says that the election was stolen from her because votes were suppressed. Here's part of what she's saying.
It was not a free and fair election. It was not fair to the thousands who were forced to wait in long lines.
Is he the legitimate governor-elect of Georgia?
He is the person who won an adequate number of votes.
An adequate number of votes, in other words, more votes than Stacey Abrams got. But she still won't concede, and instead her PAC has filed a lawsuit alleging, that phrase again, voter suppression. So what exactly is voter suppression? Richard Goodstein is a lawyer and a former advisor to the Bill and Hillary Clinton family and campaigns, and he joins us today. Richard, thanks a lot for coming on.
Sure.
So look, I'm totally opposed to voter suppression. I'm for democracy, and always have been. So I think this is worth looking at carefully. But I'm hung up on this kind of logic barrier. If voter turnout was higher than it had been in the previous two elections, how did voter suppression play a role?
So you're enough of a scientist to know that correlation does not prove causality, right? Let me quote.
What does that mean?
Well, what I mean is there was higher turnout all over the country. And here are 5 things that Republican governors and legislators did to suppress the vote over the past few years. Closed polling places, purged eligible voters. They barred felons, which was overturned in Florida. Voter ID was required, which basically that basically cuts against inner city, often minority voters. And early voting was eliminated in states where early voting typically favored Democrats. So those steps were taken. Notwithstanding that, Kemp won. Congratulations. But that doesn't mean that there was no voter suppression.
Okay.
We know those steps
But actually, it does mean that because voter suppression is is what it sounds like. It's the suppression of votes. But Stacey Abrams got more votes than any Democrat in 10 years in the state of Georgia. She got more votes than Hillary Clinton got, who was running for president in 2016. And so, I mean, where are the votes that were suppressed? I mean, she got a historic number of votes. I don't understand. So maybe there were attempts made, but they didn't work by definition, right?
I mean, you could have better pitching and still have more home runs, right? Basically, we know that Kemp had tens of thousands of people declared ineligible, and disproportionately those tended to be African Americans.
But no one's claiming they weren't ineligible. They didn't match. The ID didn't. Their voter registration did not match the day of voting form, and that's the law in the state of Georgia. So I'm not sure.
That wasn't the only reason. Again, I think there were plenty of other. Again, there were polling places that were closed. I mean, there were various steps that were taken. Look, as a general rule,
will you at least concede that exit polls suggest that African Americans voted in the same proportion they had in previous elections in the state of Georgia. So there was no exit polling did not detect any drop off in black voting, period. And her numbers, again, were the highest for any Democrat in 10 years. So will you at least concede that maybe voter suppression, if it existed, wasn't very effective?
No, because in every other state, no, because here's why. You can laugh.
Right,
in every
I am
other state,
laughing.
black vote was up. Right? So the fact that it stayed flat with a black woman at the head of the ticket tells you something was going on to actually suppress it. Yeah, when I say correlation doesn't prove causality, the mere fact that it was flat doesn't mean that it wouldn't have been higher.
Are black people required to vote for black candidates?
Of course not. They tend to.
Oh, they tend to. Is that? But that's not the law. Should it be the law? Is that what you're saying? What are you saying?
I'm saying we know statistically African Americans don't like Donald Trump. They actually did like Stacey Abrams.
Actually, African American men like Donald Trump more than they like Mitt Romney. That's true.
Well, back in 2016, I don't think that's the case anymore.
Okay, we'll see.
We'll find out as well.
All right, Richard, great.